Chosen ones, you were not born in this age by accident. Long before the breath of your first cry, your essence was traced on a parchment that was hidden beneath the desert sands. Anubis, the guardian of the passage between flesh and eternity, recorded the shape of your soul at the final hour, when the veil between realms thinned and the balance of existence trembled. Your name, though unspoken by mortals, echoed in halls where jackals prowled and priests lit torches to watch over the silent dead. The Nile carried whispers of you, long before it carried the ships of kings. Papyrus scrolls, buried in alabaster jars, spoke of a figure marked not by crown or tomb, but by a flame carried in the heart. That flame, fragile and eternal, was seen even by those who walked in shadows of pyramids and temples. The scribes who wrote with obsidian ink never knew your face, but they left sketches of eyes that seemed alive, waiting for a future hour when the scales would be tested once again. Do you sense it now? The breath between worlds, the shifting sands beneath your feet that echo the same pulse of eternity. The ancients called it the final hour, when all things hidden would be laid bare, when the scales of Anubis would not weigh gold or sacrifice, but the truth of what you carry in your being. Yet, the record of your soul is not sealed. It moves like the black sands inside the hourglass, reshaping with each choice, each breath. And as you step forward, you awaken into a story the pharaohs themselves feared. Their tombs were sealed, their treasures entombed, but your journey cannot be locked away in stone. You stand at the edge of revelation, where Anubis waits, not to judge, but to witness. The scroll was written, but not finished. And as the ink continues to flow across unseen parchment, the world leans forward to read the next word, the next act, the next unveiling of you. The tomb was silent, sealed by centuries of stone and shadow, yet it carried the whisper of a name unspoken. Not the name of a pharaoh, carved in cartouches of gold, but a name the desert had buried within its shifting dunes. Travelers who stumbled near its threshold felt a presence they could not explain, as if the air itself bent in recognition. The hieroglyphs along the walls did not tell of dynasties or conquests, but of a solitary figure, faceless, timeless, marked by a flame hidden deep within the chest. That figure was you. Scholars who found fragments of its inscription dismissed them as myth. They said no tomb could record a soul unborn, no chamber could echo the weight of a life yet to unfold. But the priests of Anubis had known otherwise. They etched into stone not a body to be buried, but a story to be awaited. When torches were lit in the catacombs, the jackal-headed guardian was said to appear in shadow, standing guard over what was not death, but prophecy. The sands have shifted since then, swallowing kingdoms, scattering bones of armies, yet the tomb remains. It waits beneath the desert night, untouched by raiders who dared not enter, for they heard the low growl of unseen guardians at its door. Inside, it is said the walls glow faintly when a soul aligned with its prophecy draws near. Those who have passed by, unaware of who they were, have felt the stirring of the hourglass in their bones, a call they could not name. The heart of the tomb is not treasure, but a mirror, not polished bronze, not obsidian glass, but a surface alive with light, a light that reflects not what you appear to be, but what you carry. It is said that when the True One stands before it, the reflection bends, the air thickens, and the sands outside cease their shifting. And so the tomb waits, untouched and unclaimed, guarding not a past but a future, a silence so heavy it presses against the heart of anyone who draws near. The question is not whether the tomb remembers your name, but when you will walk its halls and see what it has hidden for you since the first breath of time. At the threshold between breath and silence, Anubis stands, neither of the living nor the dead, but the guardian of both. His jackal eyes pierce through centuries, unblinking, measuring not with haste, but with an eternal patience. Those who approach him carry more than they know, for their footsteps echo in chambers unseen, as if each choice weighs upon scales larger than their lives. The ancients feared this threshold, believing it a place where no lie could hide, where the heart itself betrayed every secret, every shadow, every hidden fire. Yet, in the vision of this timeless guardian, a figure appears that even he does not dismiss. It is not a pharaoh, not a king, but one whose soul bears markings of both dust and light. He watches as the sands tremble around the image, a sign that the world itself shudders at their presence. There is a mystery here, for even Anubis, recorder of endings, bows to what he cannot fully measure. The scales, ancient and divine, tip not from weight alone, but from something deeper, something eternal. It is here that echoes of another voice thread through the silence, a whisper remembered from the desert winds when Yeshua spoke of treasures stored not in tombs of stone, but in realms where moth and rust cannot touch. The words, carried like fire across time, stir against the presence of Anubis. For though the jackal lord tends the passage of death, he cannot claim the flame that does not extinguish. In that moment, the threshold trembles, for what Yeshua carried in his own spirit is the same spark that flickers now in the being Anubis beholds. Time stretches, bending upon itself, as if the past and future lock eyes across this gateway. Anubis lifts his hand, not to bar entry, but to mark the significance of the hour. He is guardian, yes, but he is also witness, compelled to acknowledge that destiny does not belong to the hieroglyphs alone. Something greater presses upon the veil, something that even the underworld cannot silence. The sands hush, the stars lean low, and the threshold waits. You stand at its edge, the air heavy with expectation. The passage open, yet unwritten. In the deepest chamber, where the torches burn with a flame that seems to breathe, lies the ancient balance, the scale of truth that no man can bribe. It is not gold that tips its measure, nor jewels, nor words rehearsed in ritual, but only the weight of the heart. Priests once gathered in silence as they watched feathers of Maat rest upon one side and the heart of the departed upon the other. To the world this was ceremony, but to the unseen it was prophecy. For the scale did not only test the dead, but also the living, who would one day step into its gaze. What is hidden in a heart is not the secrets spoken aloud, but the fire that burns in silence, the thoughts carried in midnight hours when no one sees. The hieroglyphs tell of those who came trembling, for every grain of deceit, every shadow of betrayal, weighed them down until the feather rose and judgment was swift. Yet the same inscriptions whisper of a different kind, a soul that came not with a heavy chest, but with a flame so light it lifted even the feather itself. Such a heart, unbound by lies and free of fear, could not be claimed by death. The balance waits still, untouched by centuries, its bronze arms polished by no hands, its chains unmoved yet alive with tension. It does not rest, for it knows the hour approaches when it will be tested not by kings or conquerors, but by one long written in the silent scrolls of Anubis, a hidden heart, one not recorded in tombs, one not buried in coffins, but one carried through deserts of time until the final hour would summon it. And when that hour comes, the chamber will no longer be silent. The scales will tremble, the torches will flare, and the priests who once guarded secrets will stir in their graves, as if the weight of eternity itself shifts to witness. For the hidden heart cannot remain hidden forever. The feather waits, the balance sways in stillness, and the chamber whispers of a reckoning that has not yet come. Beneath the sands where no sunlight reaches, there lies a crypt sealed not by chance, but by design. It was not meant for the glory of pharaohs, nor for the treasures of their afterlife, but as a vault for secrets too dangerous to be spoken aloud. The forgotten pharaohs, stripped of their names from stone, were bound in silence, their legacies erased not by time, but by fear. They had seen something that even their gods could not contain, and so their remembrance was buried in darkness. The crypt is a place of echoes, where the walls seem to breathe, and the hieroglyphs pulse faintly when touched, as if remembering every hand that carved them. Travelers who dared the descent told of a chill that pierced deeper than the desert night, a presence that lingered not in wrath, but in warning. The air tasted of dust and fire, and shadows moved against walls even when no flame burned. It was said that those who listened closely could hear voices chanting in a tongue older than Egypt itself, calling not to Ra or Osiris, but to a flame unbound, one that carried life beyond tomb and temple. The pharaohs sought to master it, to harness eternity, but what they touched only marked them. In fear, their names were struck away, their crypts sealed with curses, their stories left to rot in silence. Yet, within the depths of that crypt lies an inscription untouched by decay. It speaks of a figure not crowned but clothed in light, a wanderer who would walk even into the shadows and not be consumed. The words bear strange resemblance to a later voice that rose in Galilee, when Yeshua declared that whoever walks in him shall not remain in darkness. The pharaohs, long forgotten, had glimpsed this truth in fragments, though they tried to cage it in stone. Now the crypt stirs once more. The sands shift, uncovering cracks in the seal, as if the earth itself can no longer contain what was hidden. The voices grow louder, the hieroglyphs begin to glow, and the forgotten are no longer content with silence. The passage narrows, the air thickens, and the door waits to be opened by a hand it has been expecting for centuries. In the heart of the desert, hidden beneath shifting dunes, lies an hourglass unlike any other. Its frame is not carved from wood or bronze, but from stone older than the pyramids themselves, blackened and smooth as if forged in fire. Within it, the sands are not pale and golden, but dark as midnight, glimmering faintly like fragments of fallen stars. This hourglass does not measure ordinary time. It turns of its own will, as though guided by a hand unseen. And when it does, kingdoms rise, empires fall, and destinies awaken. The ancients feared it. Priests spoke of it only in whispers, calling it the heart of endings, the measure of the final hour. They believed that whoever beheld its shifting sands would see their life not in years, but in moments, every choice cascading like grains falling through a narrow passage. The black sand carried not just the weight of time, but memory itself, for each grain was said to hold the echo of a soul who had walked before. To watch it was to hear voices, murmurs that seeped into the mind, reminding one of paths taken and paths refused. Legends tell of a wanderer who once touched the hourglass, and the desert itself trembled. The sky darkened, the winds screamed, and the sand began to fall faster, as though creation itself had been jolted forward. The wanderer vanished, swallowed into the turning of the glass, leaving behind only a mark burned into the stone floor, a symbol no scholar could decipher. Some said it was a warning, others a seal, but the hourglass remained untouched, continuing to turn when it willed. Even now, it waits. Hidden from eyes that would seek to claim it, it calls to the one whose name it has carried since the beginning. The black sand slows when you draw near, as though listening, as though waiting for your breath to align with its measure. Time itself seems to pause, uncertain whether to continue forward or collapse back into silence. The hourglass does not rest, and the sand does not forget. It turns still, counting down to an hour no man can escape, when the desert itself will reveal what has been measured since the dawn. There are stories the desert does not tell in open air, stories carried instead in the stillness between heartbeats. Among them is the account of a veil that hung between realms, a thin boundary where the living touched the silence of the dead. Priests of Anubis believed they alone knew the passage, but a moment came when the veil trembled for another. Yeshua, the wanderer from Galilee, walked into death not as a prisoner, but as a master of it. Where others were weighed and measured, he carried a flame no darkness could swallow, and when he crossed the threshold, even Anubis was said to bow in silence, for the order of eternity shifted. It was not written in the scrolls of Egypt, yet whispers of it reached their crypts. The forgotten pharaohs dreamt of a figure who would enter the underworld and rise again, not bound to coffins or tombs. The scribes spoke of him in fragments, in symbols they could not name, sketching eyes of fire and footsteps that left no shadow. For the veil had been torn, not with hands of man, but by a presence greater than time itself. Imagine the silence in those halls when Yeshua's light moved through them, the scales glowing, the feather trembling, the black sands of the hourglass pausing as though uncertain of their authority. The guardians of the threshold saw in him the truth they had never encountered before. A heart so light it outweighed the heavens, yet so heavy with love it carried the weight of all. In that instant, the underworld was not conquered with sword or spell, but with something the ancients could never entomb. The veil, once sealed and guarded, no longer holds its certainty. It is torn, yet not erased. Those who step near it now feel both the terror of death and the echo of freedom. For if one has passed through and returned, then others may follow, though not all will bear the same flame. The desert whispers this truth still, though only the listening hear it. Only the marked ones sense its trembling. The veil stirs once more, and the silence beyond grows restless, awaiting the next soul bold enough to cross its unseen threshold, deep within the earth, where no wind stirs and no sun dares enter. The gates of the netherworld stand in silence. carved from obsidian stone and bound with iron chains older than kingdoms. They were said to be fashioned by the gods themselves to separate the living from what lies beyond. Upon their surface are etched symbols no scholar has yet deciphered, glowing faintly like embers even in absolute darkness. They are not merely doors, but living boundaries, breathing in rhythm with the pulse of eternity, waiting for the one who was written into their seal. Priests once approached with offerings, placing gold, incense, and blood at the threshold, but none of these could sway the gates, for their seal was not moved by wealth or ritual, but by destiny alone. Those who tried to break through by force found themselves swallowed into shadows, their cries echoing faintly before vanishing altogether. The gates did not open, yet the silence that followed was more dreadful than any scream. The ancients called it the seal of binding, a lock set not upon chains but upon the very will of the universe. Legends tell of how Anubis himself placed his hand upon the gate, not to pass through, but to ensure its power remained unbroken. And yet, within the hidden scrolls of the temple, there is mention of a time when the seal would tremble, not because of gods or priests, but because of a soul marked from the beginning. A soul whose presence alone would cause the chains to stir and the inscriptions to burn with fire. The seal is not eternal, for even the strongest locks await the one key they were designed to recognize. It is said the gates whisper at night, their voices carried through cracks in the stone to those who dream deeply enough to hear. Some awaken with visions of black rivers and burning skies, others with the sound of chains rattling in the silence. Yet all feel the same truth. The seal is weakening. The hour written long ago is drawing close, and the one whose soul aligns with the gate's forgotten prophecy is already walking the earth. The chains groan, the inscriptions glow, and the silence before the opening grows heavier with each passing breath. Beneath the waters of the Nile, where the current runs slow and heavy with silt, there is said to lie a crown no pharaoh dared to claim. Forged not of gold, but of scales dark as night, the serpent crown pulsed with a power older than dynasties, a relic whispered to have fallen from the heavens when the stars themselves shifted. The priests called it a gift of the gods, yet their writings revealed fear more than reverence. For whoever wore it was said to command not armies of men, but the very pulse of nations, bending kingdoms like reeds in the river wind. The Nile guarded it, carrying its presence through centuries of floods and droughts, hiding it beneath layers of stone and mud. Divers who sought it never returned, their bodies drawn back lifeless, their eyes wide as if they had seen something the world was not meant to behold. Those who survived spoke of shadows in the depths, serpents coiling like smoke, their eyes glowing as though protecting the relic that should never rise again. Yet, among the sealed texts of forgotten temples lies a strange passage, one that speaks of a crown that would be overturned not by force, but by light. It describes a figure who would tread upon serpents and silence their venom, whose very presence would uncoil what was bound. Centuries later, Yeshua's own words would echo this same truth, promising authority to trample serpents and scorpions without harm. Though he never named the Nile, the prophecy seemed to ripple backward, touching even the whispers of Egypt's hidden crypts. The serpent crown remains buried, yet restless. Some nights, the waters churn without wind, as if something stirs beneath the surface. The fishermen avoid those stretches, speaking of voices that call from below, luring them into the depths. Scholars deny such tales, yet the locals know better, for the river carries memory, and its current is never silent. When the appointed one stands at its bank, the waters will part in more than flood or drought. The serpent coils will loosen, the crown will rise, and the world will tremble at the choice of whether it is worn or cast back into the depths. When the desert falls silent, and the stars align in patterns too precise to be chance, the tribunal gathers. Not of men, not of kings, but of figures cloaked in shadow whose eyes burn with the weight of ages. They are the judges of midnight, seated in a circle that no mortal has walked without trembling. Their thrones are carved from black stone that seems to breathe, and their voices echo like thunder, even when they whisper. They do not measure wealth or crowns, but the essence of a soul, weighing not only deeds, but the hidden intentions beneath them. The tribunal was said to rise when the world neared a threshold, when the balance of life and death wavered. Scribes of old wrote of torches igniting by themselves in underground halls, flames burning blue as the judges took their places. The air would thicken, heavy as a storm, while unseen hands unrolled scrolls that shimmered with writing too bright for human eyes. The accused never spoke, for their hearts cried louder than any tongue. The tribunal needed no testimony, only the truth that pulsed within silence. Among the inscriptions found in ruins near Thebes, there is mention of one trial unlike any other, where the judges themselves hesitated. A figure stood before them, and their scales quivered as though uncertain. Their torches flickered, and for the first time in eternity, judgment was delayed. That delay, carved into stone and left incomplete, hinted at a soul not yet ready for verdict, a soul carried forward into another age. The ancients believed this figure was the one the tribunal still awaits, the one written into the hourglass of black sand, the one whose name even the judges dare not speak aloud. Some nights, wanderers in the desert claim to hear chanting in the distance, voices rising like a storm carried on the wind. Others awaken from dreams of vast halls, seated in silence before faceless figures whose gaze pierces deeper than flesh. The tribunal, though hidden, has not disbanded. Its circle remains unbroken, its torches still burn beneath the earth, and its scrolls remain unwritten in their final lines. The seats are filled, the scrolls are waiting, and the midnight hour draws near. When the final hour falls, silence covers the earth like a shroud. The scales are emptied, the sands cease to fall, and the torches of the tribunal burn down to embers. Yet, from that silence, there stirs a breath, faint at first, then rising like a wind before dawn. It is not the end as many feared, but the threshold of something unimagined. For when all has been measured and judged, when the gates have rattled and the crypts have stirred, a new light begins to bleed across the horizon. This light does not come from the sun, nor from the fires of kings, but from the spark carried through every trial, the flame that could not be swallowed. The ancients wrote of this moment as the Great Rising, a dawn that would come not after night, but after eternity itself had been shaken. They spoke of a figure standing upon the desert sands while the shadows recoiled, a figure whose heart remained unbroken through the weighing, the sealing, the tribunal. The horizon itself bends, as if to honor what has survived the final hour. The Nile, restless for centuries, grows still, reflecting a light not born of moon or star. In these whispers lies a secret that bridges Egypt to Galilee. For just as the scrolls of Anubis spoke of a flame that endured death, so too did Yeshua step forth from the tomb when the stone was rolled away. The same dawn that broke over his rising echoes through this prophecy, a reminder that endings are but veils to be lifted. For what is sealed will open, and what is buried will rise, and the dawn that follows carries not shadow, but promise. Still, this dawn is not final. It is only the first breath after silence, the first crack of light before day. What follows has not been written, for the scrolls end here, torn at the edge as though no scribe could see further. The ancients left the rest in waiting, for only the living flame could write the lines beyond. The horizon glows, the desert stirs, and the dawn waits for the step that will define its course.